Hey everybody, this is Anthony with VR Game Rankings. Welcome to our very first episode of 2018. It is January 1st. This is New Year's Day. It's 2018 and this is episode 66 of our daily vlog series. And guess what? Okay, so for today, what we're going to do is we are going to have a bit of a shorter show. So what I'm going to cover today is the 3 most important games of 2017 in the VR gaming industry. And I'll also cover a handful of honorable mentions, but basically that's all we're going to get into today. Need to have a bit of a shorter show. I got some other stuff going on that I have to get to, so I have to do kind of a quick banger on this one, but I still wanted to deliver an episode today like I promised. And so what I thought we would discuss today is what were some of the absolute most important games of 2017 for the VR gaming industry, and what kind of significance do these games have? I'm not so much going to talk about how great these games are as just a game to play. I'm going to talk more about their significance to the VR gaming industry and what these games mean going forward, and how are they going to take us to a new plateau in the VR gaming industry. And so I'm going to cover these games in a chronological order in which they arrived, not in their order of importance, okay? Although it doesn't really matter. I mean, all 3 of these games are incredibly important and have a lot to do with where the VR gaming industry is moving to. Okay, so let's go ahead and start this off with Robo Recall. So Robo Recall arrived back in March, and as you know, Robo Recall came to us from Epic Games. And the thing about Robo Recall is we have to go back to January 2017 and to February 2017, and we have to remember what the climate was in the VR gaming industry at that time. And it was not necessarily all smiles and celebrations back in January and February of this year. And the reason why is because when you have to go back to the previous year, 2016 was supposed to be this coming out party for the VR gaming industry. The HTC Vive launched in 2016. The Oculus Rift launched in 2016. And of course, the PlayStation VR also arrived in 2016. And so the arrival of these 3 major VR platforms was kind of the initiation of this whole VR thing. And this was the year of VR. 2016 was the year of VR. And this is when these things were supposed to take the world by storm, and consumers were supposed to just go running and screaming to their stores to try to buy all of this hardware and to buy a whole bunch of games, and VR was going to take over everything, right? Well, when we got into January and February, we kind of knew that, we had a decent year, things worked out pretty well, but we didn't get the kind of adoption that some people were thinking. We saw these different sales charts that venture capitalists were thinking that VR was going to be worth, 20 billion within a couple of years, and all these different things that were going to go on. And the sales in 2016 didn't quite live up to that. We didn't have the incredible adoption rates that we might have liked to have had with, say, the Oculus Rift, the HTC Vive, or even the PlayStation VR. Remember, PlayStation VR didn't have a ton of units available to sell, even if they wanted to. And so things didn't start off on this incredible note. And that's why Robo Recall had such significant importance when it arrived on March 1st, because this was absolutely huge. Robo Recall arriving on March 1st, a lot of times we talk about certain games might save VR. And in a way, I think Robo Recall didn't single-handedly save VR, but damn, it really helped. And it really came at an absolute critical juncture, because the thing about Robo Recall is you may have had naysayers on NeoGAF and some of these other gaming forums that were saying, well, look at VR, it kind of stumbled out of the gate. It's not this runaway success that everybody thought it was. People don't really care about VR. So early in 2017, a lot of VR's biggest haters, they were as loud as they had ever been because they could look at the results of 2016 and say, you know what, VR didn't catch fire. And they had some evidence there. And so they were kind of celebratory about this type of thing. But then on March 1st, Robo Recall comes out, and it kind of changed the whole shape of the way things were working. And so Robo Recall is our first legitimate AAA game. I mean, this is Epic Games. This is a game company that is known for making some of the best games in all of gaming. I mean, the Gears of War series, all of the great games that Epic Games have brought out over the years. And here they are with their first legitimate VR game. And it's a banger. You know, it's a banger of a game. Robo Recall came out. Of course, it was available exclusively on the Oculus Rift. The game was made available for free to anyone that had Oculus Touch. And also, if you didn't have Touch, you could buy the game for $29.99. I had an HTC Vive at the time. I did not have an Oculus Rift, but I was incredibly excited for Robo Recall. I remember it kind of came out of nowhere. We didn't really have advanced warning that Robo Recall was going to be available on March 1st. It just came out of nowhere. We're like, oh my God, Robo Recall is available. And I remember at the time, we had to play it through Revive. I didn't have an Oculus Rift, had to use Revive. And although I could play the game through Revive, and I was very happy to do so, and I paid my $29.99 with no qualms whatsoever, I will say that playing the game in Revive, I think I commented back on a VR Roundtable episode that I kind of felt like I had one hand tied behind my back when I was playing Robo Recall, because just the translations of the controls didn't quite work so well, and it just didn't have that native feel that you would really like to have. But it didn't matter. This was AAA. The graphics were incredible. The sound was incredible. The playability was really, really good. And just the comedy factor of the whole thing, it really had this arcade quality to it. I really feel like Robo Recall, there's something about Robo Recall that really reminds me of arcade games in the 90s, like from Sega. Sega has their AM2 division. These were the guys that made like Sega Rally and Daytona USA, and some of the best games ever for Sega came from their AM2 division. And there's something about Robo Recall, like the music and some of the comic book stuff that is going on in the game kind of reminds me of a Sega game from the 90s from that AM2 division. Like if somehow they were to work on VR, we would have got something similar to Robo Recall. And so this game came out at a great time. It was perfect timing for it because a lot of the naysayers in the industry, they had to take a step back. Now that Robo Recall came out, they had to reevaluate their position. And that's what happened. A lot of haters got their chance to try Robo Recall right around this time, and a lot of them changed their tune. And that was huge in changing the momentum of the VR gaming industry. Things were looking kind of bleak before Robo Recall. Robo Recall comes out, and it really changed the momentum of the entire VR gaming industry. I really feel like it's one of the most important games of 2017. We don't really remember it that much because it is back in March. But the time when it came, this was our shining star. This was the game we could point to. People could say, well, VR doesn't have any games. No, we've got Robo Recall. Have you played Robo Recall? You know, that was the game. We put it up on a pedestal, and it was a great game to put on a pedestal. It lived up to the hype. You put a new person into Robo Recall, and they're like, oh my God, this is so fun. I can rip off the body parts of these robots. I can throw them around. I can smash them into each other. I can throw them up into the air, and I can juggle them with my guns. Tremendous fun, incredible graphics, great sound, playability is rock solid. And so Robo Recall was an incredibly important game for the VR industry, and it got it all started off way back on March 1st. Okay, so the next game to come along that I think was incredibly important is Lone Echo. Lone Echo arrived on July 20th. And so it's kind of like stages. You know, we got Robo Recall early, and then kind of halfway through the year, we get Lone Echo. And once again, the timing couldn't be more perfect. Now, this is coming to us from Ready at Dawn, a studio that has done a lot of work in the console world, a highly respected studio. And this is their first VR game. And so again, this is more AAA fare, and it's at a perfect time. But there's a big difference between Lone Echo and Robo Recall. Robo Recall is an arcade style game. It is a game that you can get in there. You can have 25, 35 minutes of intense fun, but you might not sit down and you might not be playing Robo Recall for hours on end. It's more of that short burst, quick hit entertainment. And so the nice thing about Lone Echo is now we get a story game that is much deeper. And Lone Echo is all about immersion. Ready at Dawn did such a great job with this game because what they did was they discovered this movement mechanic, this 0G movement. This is the first game that has really brought us this. And just the movement mechanic alone has really been hugely important to VR in general, because people could get into Lone Echo and you can grab the side walls of something and you can pull yourself along, and it just works. It just works for your brain. So you don't have to worry about teleport. You don't have to worry about natural locomotion or any of these different issues where some people can do it, some people can't. You can put anybody in Lone Echo, and it's simple enough for them that they realize, okay, I grab the side of a wall, I push myself, and then my momentum, I'm kind of floating through space. It works so natural that basically anybody can do it. So this was huge. It was very important. And then we have to go to the human side of the thing. Let's talk about the character Olivia, quite possibly the most realistic human character that I've ever had the pleasure of being in a game with. I feel like I almost know this person and that I was in a place physically with this person. That's the thing about VR, is you really feel like you're looking at people, you're looking at characters, and you feel like they occupy space. They take up space. You have to give them a little bit of room. And being in that game with Olivia and just interacting with her, it really felt like I was in a science fiction movie. And that's what Lone Echo brought to the table. Is one of the dreams that I've always had is I want to get as close as I possibly can to living inside a movie and being inside a movie. And Lone Echo was like living inside a science fiction movie. And so this game was incredibly important, came at a perfect time in the summertime to kind of reinforce what Robo Recall was already doing. Now, this, of course, is an exclusive game like Robo Recall as well. So the downside of this is that if you had an HTC Vive, again, you would have to use Revive to play this. And I did use Revive to play this initially, and then later did get the Oculus. I ended up getting an Oculus Rift and was able to play it natively, but started out playing this in Revive as well. And it works for the most part. And so this was a game that could kind of help carry the industry during that middle point in time. And we saw, again, an example of what AAA brings to the table. And I go back to the haters on NeoGAF. This was another game that kind of ruined their argument a little bit, because if you get into Lone Echo and you see the way everything works and just all the details and the immersion that you can get in that game, you can get really lost in Lone Echo. And a lot of that is due to the movement system of the game, being able to grab onto walls and pull yourself along. The only way it would be even better is if somehow you were suspended off the ground and, you were kind of free floating as you played it, kind of floating somehow on some type of contraption. That would be the only way it would get any better. But the immersion was there. I would be in Lone Echo for an hour or longer and just be completely immersed in the world, because there's nothing that takes you out of it. Truly impressive. And that arrived in the middle point of the year. It was absolutely critical. Okay, and the last game I want to get to in terms of the most important VR games of 2017 is Fallout 4 VR. And Fallout 4 VR, I mean, we know this game has a lot of problems, a lot of issues, especially when it first launched. But I have to say, guys, I continue to play this game on a daily basis. In fact, yesterday, I played this game for probably 2.5 hours and had some of the most enjoyable game time I can remember, period. It's just magnificent. It's absolutely magnificent. And what it is, I'm not going to talk about the problems with Fallout 4 VR, you know, some of the control issues or getting it to run on various platforms and how much power you need for your computer. Look, I got a 970 graphics card. Okay. I'm using a CPU from a bygone era from a long time ago, and I'm able to play Fallout 4. Now, I did have to change a bunch of settings to get everything dialed in, but the bottom line is I am playing Fallout 4, and I'm playing basically every day, and it's working fine, and I can go anywhere, and there's no stuttering or anything. The graphics do look a bit pixely. There's a lot of shimmering that's going on all over the place, but once you're in there for 20 minutes, you forget all about that. You're just in this world. And the thing that is so magical about Fallout 4 VR, and the reason why I think it's going to be ultimately one of the absolute most important VR games there is because you can role play in that game. You can feel like you're there. You really can. You're holding a gun. You're in this world. The winds are whipping. You hear the music in the background. You hear gunshots echoing from what sounds like a mile away. I think one of the biggest achievements that they were able to achieve with Fallout 4 VR is the audio. Now, I know that this audio is not perfect 3D audio that was designed specifically for VR game players to make all the sounds sound exactly like they're coming from specific locations. But whatever work Escalation Studios and Bethesda Game Studios did on the sound to kind of convert it to like 3D audio is absolutely amazing, because I've been in this game. You hear sounds. They sound like they're coming from the distance. You hear gunshots that are ricocheting that sound like they're coming from a couple blocks over there. You feel like you're in a war-torn country, like you're in Afghanistan or something. I mean, it sounds quite realistic the way these sounds work. And you just feel like you're there. You feel like you're part of something. And the enemy encounters that you have these enemies, they have a greater level of intelligence than a lot of the enemies that we deal with in a lot of VR games. And they say things, you know, they're talking, they're speaking, there's real voice work here. Millions upon millions of dollars were poured into Fallout 4 originally, and all of this comes over with the VR version. But I can tell you why this game is so important. I played Fallout 4 on my Xbox when it first came out, on an Xbox One. That's where I played Fallout 4, and I remember going to some of these different locations, but when I'm playing it now, it is a completely different ball game, because I go to a factory or something that I'm supposed to infiltrate, and now it is a real structure. I'm coming at it from the back. It's different. It's just so different than being on a flat game. And I think the importance that this brings to VR just cannot be mistaken. This is a game we are going to be playing for a long time. I think one thing that's going to happen with Fallout 4 VR, this is the game that it's going to continue to be modded. There's going to continue to be high res texture packs and different things are going to be added onto it. A lot of extra things are going to be added onto it. And it's just, people are going to be playing this game like 2 and 3 years from now, because this is a watershed moment. This is the future. I truly believe that we're always going to have something similar to Fallout 4 from in terms of this go anywhere world, a world that is just happening. This is what VR was made for. This is a marriage made in heaven. And I think developers, not only Bethesda Game Studios, but other companies are going to bring out games that are going to be similar to this. And we're basically just going to try to keep making this game and just making it better, making it look better, making it sound better, having more interactivity, having more agency. But I am absolutely in love with Fallout 4 VR. It is my game of the year for 2017. And I think it's incredibly important because we've talked about the haters. We've talked about all the people out there that like VR doesn't have any games, man. VR doesn't have any games. And they could still complain about Robo Recall, that it's just an arcade kind of a game. They could say that Lone Echo is doesn't last for more than, you know, so many hours or however long it lasts. But Fallout 4 VR, how are you going to throw those complaints on Fallout 4 VR? You can play Fallout 4 VR for probably 100 hours, if not more, and you're in this incredible world where you feel like you're there. It's truly magical. So these are the three most important games, I think, for VR in 2017. Robo Recall kind of helped save VR. Lone Echo showed us the power of characters and the power of story and the power of immersion and being able to forget where you are and really dive into it. And then Fallout 4 VR, I really feel like it is the dream. This is the dream that we've been waiting for, at least if you're a single player gamer. See, I'm a single player guy. I don't need to be in these multiplayer worlds that a lot of people need. And for me, man, Fallout 4 is just exactly what the doctor ordered. And so 3 incredible games. Now, I did want to quickly mention a couple honorable mentions. Skyrim VR for PlayStation VR has pretty much done the same thing that Fallout 4 VR is doing. Although personally for me, the world of Fallout 4 is more my flavor. It's just more my flavor, okay? And so, but Skyrim VR, a lot of the same things that I'm saying about Fallout 4 apply to Skyrim VR. Resident Evil 7, you know, how quickly do we forget about Resident Evil 7? We go back to that early days of 2017 when VR kind of didn't take over and there were a lot of doubters thinking the bubble had burst. Well, late in January, Resident Evil 7, although it was a PlayStation 4 exclusive, PSVR exclusive, we didn't get it on the Rift or the Vive quite yet, it still really helped VR because this game kind of helped bridge the gap to get us to Robo Recall. So Resident Evil 7, we can't forget about that. And then the last honorable mention is The Invisible Hours. I don't believe this is an actual video game per se, but I do believe it has incredible importance for the VR industry going forward because I believe The Invisible Hours is the first legitimate VR movie. And what I think is going to happen in the future with storytelling in VR is that it's going to move away from telling a specific story about a person or a situation, and instead the stories are going to move more to location-based stories where a story is taking place in a location and it's happening. The story is going on and you can visit that location and you can interact with that story, but you're not going to be able to absorb all of it. And so the future of storytelling is you're going to get a powerful story that takes place in a location, and you might have to experience this story 20, 30 times to get everything because you're going to experience different parts of it because it's a living, breathing world that you're going to be able to tour and watch the story from a third-person perspective like you're an invisible ghost that is just absorbing everything in and taking everything in. So I really believe The Invisible Hours is going to kind of pave the way for a new style of storytelling that VR can take full and total advantage of. Okay, guys, so that's going to do it. Ended up still with a 20-something minute show. So even when I try to do a short show, it doesn't work very well. But anyway, this has been episode 66 for Monday, January 1st. I am hoping tomorrow on Tuesday to possibly go back to the news. We haven't covered any news in quite some time, so I'm going to be able to look at any of these tiny little news stories, scrape them all together, and try to get back into the news. And of course, the winter CES is going to be coming in the near term as well, and we're extremely excited about that. But anyway, guys, that'll do it. See everybody tomorrow. Take it easy. Later.